Our final speaker, interesting enough, his surname does translate to mean money maker, and that's a pretty good name to have in any industry, I think. So I'd like to welcome onto the stage Jan. I've got to try and get this right. Jan Geldmacher from Sprint Business.
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about Sprint and the 5G opportunity and why we are so excited about the 5G opportunity. Now I would like to start with a quote of the CEO and founder of Softbank. And Softbank is the majority shareholder of Sprint with 85%. The boom in the rate at which we collect, analyze, and glean knowledge from data is like the Cambrian Explosion, the period during which prehistoric creatures developed the 5 senses. So that maybe sounds a little bit strange if you apply that quote to technology. But if you think about it, the Cambrian Explosion happened actually in the prehistoric time when life came out of the water, developed the 5 senses, and only then the life forms exploded, and we have the variety and diversity of life that we have today. That basically took 55 billion years. The Cambrian Explosion took 55 billion years. Now we compare what we experience today in the time when sensoric booms with that Cambrian Explosion. And so the big difference, though, is that our Cambrian Explosion today is happening in much less time. If you think about it and think back a little bit, when the internet evolved 25 years ago, when the Mosaic browser was the first browser that was on your laptop, or not your laptop, we didn't have laptops back then, we had big PCs on our desktops, and we started that journey. It's only 25 years ago until today where we have sensors in nearly everything that we have out there. If you think about a car already today has about 500 sensors embedded in it. And we believe that there will be 1 trillion of sensors soon in the devices around the world that will be out there and will be developed. Now, all of these sensors basically allow us to collect data and glean knowledge from that data, and networks in the future need to be prepared to deal with that occasion and drive the opportunity from it. Because collecting data is meaning nothing if you can't turn it into intelligence. And in order to turn it into intelligence, you need to collect it, and networks need to bring it together. So science fiction, as we have seen it in many movies, is becoming science facts in these days. And our Cambrian Explosion is happening in an exponential time frame compared to the Cambrian Explosion in the past. Now, I'm in charge of business, Sprint Business. So I deal with business customers around the world. And Sprint Business thinks about when we develop products, what are the challenges that our customers are actually facing? And when you think about it, I believe we can narrow it down to basically 3 major challenges that all of our customers, be they small, be them big, be them multinational, have to deal with. And I want to spend a couple of minutes on this chart. So the first big challenge is the changing workforce. Why is that a challenge? Well, today there's about 4 generations of people working in one company environment. Soon it will be 5 generations, because retirement age is increasing, the age when young people hit the workplace is decreasing. So 5 generations in one workplace. At the same time, people do not always sit in the same locations. They're distributed all over the place, but work together in collaborative environments. At the same time, we are competing for talent, and because we have to compete for talent, we compete for talent on a global basis. At the same time, up to 50% of the people that work in a company environment are self-employed. Just think about it, what that means for networks, what that means for security, what that means for IT, and how you deploy IT in these days. And again, this is accelerating very much. Second big trend, globalization. And I guess most of you guys here in the room work in companies that are subject to globalization in some way or the other. But I believe still it is not yet really understood how fast that globalization trend will change the way we work and our customers are working. Money is flowing around the world and is invested wherever the best return on investment is expected. You need to be prepared to be flexible enough to follow the money flow in the investment cycles that you see. At the same time, if you have a business, even if it is a domestic business, and Sprint is a Kansas City company, just think about that mid-size or small business in Kansas City. That small business in Kansas City competes with competitors that are maybe based in India, or maybe are based in China, or maybe are based in Africa or in Europe. These small business in Kansas City also supplies their goods and their stuff from all over the world. And this becomes possible because, again, of the networks and the network infrastructures that we deploy around the world. And again, this is accelerating. And last but not least, a very, very big trend is digitization or digitalization. So what we are seeing here is also not to underestimate. And you all have in mind the big examples of, the Ubers and Airbnbs and so on. But I think what is important to acknowledge is that the market entry barriers to enter into new business models have been taken down with the technology that we have seen evolving over the last couple of years. 4G is a good example for that. 4G made Uber happen, right? So all of a sudden, you disrupt with technology through digitization businesses that were out there for 100 years or longer, very successful. So these are the three major trends that we see that our customers are all facing, okay? So the not so good thing is the networks that we have out there, the legacy networks, are not really prepared yet to deal with these trends and to translate the challenge into an opportunity. The networks that we have out there are very much prepared to solve single isolated problems or challenges. There is this IP/MPLS network that connects the locations of our customers. There's that wireless network that connects the people, and there's this IoT network that connects the things. And very often these things don't work together, although taking into account the trends that I've talked about earlier, the barriers and borders between those things are blurring. So we need to think about how have networks in the future to look like. Now, switching gears a little bit. Again, talking about the trends in the industry. To the right side of that chart, you see the data center. Now we are getting into really futuristic things here. We will be able soon to replicate the power and the capacity of a human brain in a data center. So still, it takes 2,000 tons of material to replicate the 1,500 grams of a human brain, but we're getting there. It will be possible to replicate the intelligence of a human brain in a data center soon. Still, it requires much, much more power to build that artificial intelligence in a data center, but we're getting there. But what is the biggest difference between the data center and the human brain? Think about it. When you came here this morning from your hotel, you didn't leave your brain behind, right? You took it with you. So the big, big advantage of the human brain is that it's the proximity to the body. It is with us all the time, and we can use it all the time. We don't need networks. We have the spiral system that connects our senses to the brain, and we live with it. But if you think further, if you think about robotics, and if you think about the fact that we can replicate soon the brain and the power and the capacity of a brain in a data center, why not connecting that capacity in the data center, in the cloud, to the robot, which is similar to the human body? And if you watch those videos that went viral for Boston Dynamics, which is one of the Softbank and Vision Fund-owned companies, you see how close we are to creating the robots that are similar in the way of acting and behaving and dealing with environment to a human or an animal. But now if you think about it, when you look into the latency time, that we use connecting through the spiral system and through the nervous system to our brain, the latencies that we have today, for example, for the eyesight, is 10 milliseconds. Basically, the eye is the only organ or the only sense in your body that can be compared to edge computing because it's directly connected to the brain. All the other senses are going through the spiral cord, and therefore the latency is a little bit longer. But now when you come to 5G networks, and you can replicate the latency of our human body and connecting to the brain through a network, all of a sudden it becomes possible to put the artificial intelligence, the brain, into a data center and connect it through 5G networks to a robot. And have a robot work together or live together or play together with a human in the same way because the latencies are the same. That is super exciting, I find. Okay? Now, the future will move in that way. We will have 1 trillion of devices connected. Everything that can be connected will be connected. And we will collect and glean data from these sensors and put them into big data clouds and big data pools and apply artificial intelligence and applications based on this artificial intelligence. This is what's going to happen in the next few years. Now, Sprint is very proud that we will be an enabler on that journey. And Sprint will be the first carrier in the US to launch 5G and one of the first in the world. And in parallel to my presentation here, my colleague Ron Marquardt is presenting on how we do that with massive MIMO rollout, with our 2.5 gigahertz spectrum and all the technology features that we bring to life very soon. But we are really proud of being one of the first in the world and definitely the first in the US. And when I talk about 5G, I mean real 5G, mobile 5G. 5G that is mobile, not replacing wireline services, not being a fake low bandwidth, low frequency kind of 5G. We're talking about the real 5G application that delivers 100 times of the speed that 4G today can deliver, which has 100 times higher capacity, and therefore the cost per unit will go down, which has a battery life, supports a battery life of the devices that is 10 times higher than 4G. And I believe, most importantly, the low latency is 10x lower than we experience in the 4G environment. This is what is so exciting about 5G. So the low latency society is what we create using 5G. So talking about the opportunity that brings, and I talked about robotics as one example, but there's many, many more. And unleashing the opportunities that are out there is the job that we as Sprint Business have to do, and we want to be the trusted consultants and trusted advisors of our customers on that journey. It is exciting to see what has been evolving over the couple of last years, just launching something like 4G. And I talked about Uber and talked about Airbnb, but there's lots of more business models that have just evolved using 4G. Now 5G will accelerate the opportunity again. Talking about smart places, digital infrastructure, next generation robotics, artificial intelligence and how they are applied, smart city environments, network slicing, and many, many more ideas to come that the entrepreneurs out there are developing right now using the technology that is coming out soon. Now, if you apply that, and I just bring you a few examples here, healthcare. Today, we are able, and all of us know that in the room, to do remote monitoring. We use 4G to remote monitor. We put devices on the bedside, monitor a patient's heart rate or vital data through a wristband. We do that with 4G. We do that with unlicensed spectrum today through Bluetooth, for example, connected to a smartphone, connect a smartphone through 4G to a data center and take information from that. That is remote diagnostics, how we use it today. Tomorrow, with the low latency in the networks and the ability to run networks in a high available and high capacity way, we can accelerate and enable a breakthrough in healthcare by being able to remotely not only diagnose, but also remotely repair the human body through remote surgery, for example. Low latency will allow us to work from every place in the world like we were there. So this is happening in healthcare. Just one example. Take the transportation industry, take the ride-share industry. Sprint, as a partner of Softbank Group and a company in the Softbank Group of family, is very close to the ride-share companies. We have basically access to about 80 million cars around the world through the Uber investment, the Didi investment, the Grab investment, that all are ride-share companies around the world. Just think about what that means for the future. Moving that data into an application that allows the car manufacturer of the future to build that car in a way that it really supports the ride-share application and the autonomous application. And autonomous driving will develop through a certain journey until it will be really a safe, autonomous environment where cars are connected to everything on the street and enable us to run a safe and less CO2 consuming environment through 5G in real time. So these are only two examples of many, many more where we are evolving from existing applications through a breakthrough technology like 5G into the new world of autonomous. Now, Softbank, as our major shareholder, has invested a lot into that environment. Softbank has laid out a vision fund. It's a $100 billion tech fund that invests into artificial intelligence, into robotics, into IoT, but also connectivity. We need that in order to evolve these business models that I've talked about, be it security, be it embedded technology in the sensors, be it applications like rideshare applications, be it healthcare, be it farming. You all find that in the environment of Softbank Group, and this enables us to really think out of the box and have access to these intellectual properties of all these companies around the world that SoftBank is investing in. And we see that as a huge opportunity for us as Sprint to evolve and, again, become the trusted advisor of our customers on that journey. Now, networks, as I said, networks of the future need to be different. The borders between the different applications are blurring. You don't know in the future anymore whether you are connected to a device or whether you are connected to a human. You need to connect your locations around the world, and you need to think converged, because technologies are converging. Applications are converging. You need to work in a multi-spectrum environment. It doesn't make sense to only think about licensed spectrum. You also need to think about unlicensed spectrum. If you think about the IoT and the explosion of sensoric in the world, if you think about 1 trillion sensors, they will not all be connected through licensed spectrum. They will be connected through Bluetooth, through Wi-Fi, through other technologies that are out there in the unlicensed area. We will build networks that have a capacity that can deal with that application of the future. So higher capacity. High speed is something that is a given in our industry anyway, so we will have to build networks that deal with high speed and the applications of the future. But more importantly, and probably most importantly, these networks need to be resilient and reliant. They need to be up and running nearly or at 100% rate, because all the applications that we're thinking about are business critical or even life critical. So that's a big challenge for all of our customers, and also a big challenge for us as a supplier to get into that magnitude. And then, of course, last but not least, those networks need to be managed. They need to be managed in a professional way so that they are up and running and flexible and affordable at all points of time. So this is the future that we foresee with Sprint to connect people, places, and things using our wireline infrastructure, which is connecting about 155 countries today, using our wireless infrastructure, which already has more than 60 million customers on the network, using our IoT infrastructure, where we have already 14 million connected devices, blurring the borders, creating a converged environment, and serve our customers with that. Thank you very much. You see, that was 44 seconds early.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Can you think of anything else more to say? Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
I obviously admire your confidence about being first with mobile 5G. And I'm sure there might be some people saying, oh, putting their hand up as well. But more importantly, I think, 5G is really going to be much more transformational for every vertical than I think any other technology that we've had before. Are there any particular verticals, like enterprises in particular verticals, that you feel are going to be the first to benefit, or are coming to you and saying, when are you going to have it, because this is going to change our businesses and the way we work?
First of all, I think we are first in the mobile 5G environment, because we have the spectrum. We have the spectrum available. It's a 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. We are rolling out our network today in a way that allows us to densify our 4G network and then switch on 5G immediately, because we're using a massive MIMO technology that allows us to split the antenna into two sectors, 64 antennas in the 128 massive MIMO environment for 4G, and when we are ready to deploy, we switch on the second half of the antenna and roll out 5G. So that goes much faster than everybody else can deploy it, because we own the spectrum already.
Sure.
Yeah. So we don't have to go through a spectrum auction in order to deploy that. So that gives us a big advantage, and also allows us to already today talk to customers about applications and use cases that 5G will support. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe healthcare is one of those sectors that will be really relevant. But of course, also everything under the umbrella of transportation, everything that will benefit from autonomous applications, be it in building, be it on campus, be it on the roads, that is benefiting from 5G very much, because of the low latency and the opportunity that comes with it.
Okay. Well, look forward to seeing the networks in place that are going to enable this, because it really is. I mean, end-to-end is a term that's perhaps overused, but this really is. There can't be any bottlenecks anywhere, can they?
Absolutely.
Along the way to make this. Jan, thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.